have an array of JSON objects, right? And we like to be able to do is, be able to perhaps iterate over this and retrieve data and whatnot, right? So let's create a service, right? Remember, services have the responsibility of manipulating and accessing and changing data, adding data. So let's create a service that can manipulate this questions array. Right, so let's create a JavaScript file, and we'll call it maybe questions.service.server. Right, and in here, what we're going to do is that we're going to load that JavaScript file, right, into a local variable. So this might be questions, and the way we load it is just using require. Right, we can say that the file is in the current directory. We can say slash. Right, and notice that we have that file available here. We do that, and now we've loaded that array and made it. We bound it to a local variable called questions. Now that we have that, we might have functions such as we could have maybe find all questions, right? And that's a function that might return just all the questions, right? We might have a function that allows me to retrieve a particular question, right? Find question by ID, right? Where we pass in the question ID, and in here we might just filter, right? We can say we can return the questions dot find. Here's the question. Here's the question, and where the question dot underscore ID matches the QID, right? That's the one we're going to return. Okay. Or we can maybe retrieve all the questions that belong to a particular quiz. If you go back into the JSON file, you'll notice that they all have a foreign key that tells them what quiz do they belong to, right? So notice that for quiz 234, we have like 3 questions for quiz 234. See that? We have 2 questions for quiz 345, and we have 1 question for quiz 123. See that? All right. So here we might say, well, give me all the questions, find questions for quiz, right? And so here's the quiz ID. And what we might do is now do a filter, right? It says, well, filter, I only want the questions for a given quiz ID. So we can say questions, we can iterate over this and say filter. I only want the questions whose questions dot quiz ID. I think it's quiz ID. Let me see. Yeah, it's quiz ID. Where the quiz ID is equal to the QZ ID as a parameter. See that? And so that returns only those questions for that particular quiz. Once we have that, we can expose this as an API so that other folks can use it. So this module exports, and then map it to a create a little map that the whole map can be exported and used from outside of the file for anybody who imports or requires this one file. Yep, there we go. So we have a little service, right, that can interact with a little data source like an array. Okay.